So our presentation today, CreativeStudio applications, creating fanware products. So I'm going to go right into CreativeStudio. That's the whole focus here, is to use this wonderful program to create a few ideas. So fanware is our subject. It's been our subject of the month basically. And of course fanware covers a wide variety of product opportunities. We sometimes call this spiritware. I think fanware is better, to be honest, because fanware does cover a lot of different potential markets. I mean, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is sports and schools and teams and things like that, and that is a big part of that particular marketplace. But you know, we can go beyond that to all kinds of different special events and different special interests out there. I mean, what the heck, with all the Pokemon craze right now, right? You could have fanware for that, provided you had the permissions for the copyrights and all that kind of stuff, you know. Okay, but we're just going to focus it probably on what a lot of you would encounter through your normal sales activities in terms of fanware, and that would be just team sports, probably a school of some sort, or potentially a local recreational organization. It doesn't matter. We're just going to approach it that way. So we're going to create a couple of different products, even though we say fanware. It doesn't have to be apparel, but I'm going to kind of go with apparel because I think apparel is a great product line to be involved with. So the first thing I want to do is work with a sweatshirt, not a t-shirt, but actually a sweatshirt. Now, here's something I want you to keep in mind. Keep in mind that, yes, I have sold and manufactured decorated products for many years. So this is voice of experience talking to you. One of the things I found many years ago is if you take a t-shirt and you take a sweatshirt, the perceived value of the sweatshirt is much higher than that of the t-shirt. The reality, when you start talking about a decent quality, middle-of-the-line sweatshirt versus a decent quality, middle-of-the-line t-shirt, the wholesale price, the price you pay to buy that blank, is not too tremendously different. Okay, it's a few dollars, but it's not really all that significantly different. But if you look at the retail price is significantly different because the consumer has a perceived value or perception that the value of the sweatshirt is much higher than that of the t-shirt. So what I'm getting at is you can put the exact same amount of work, labor, ink, time, everything into creating an image on a sweatshirt versus creating the same thing on a t-shirt, but you'll probably get a higher margin off of the sweatshirt because you can charge a higher rate because of the perceived value. So the first thing I'm actually going to do here is, instead of a t-shirt, is I'm actually going to tackle a sweatshirt because, yes, we do have poly performance wear in the sweatshirt format. So let's take a look at our product category. As we go down, you'll notice one category here, it's cotton garments and wearables. I will tell you that's set up for those who use ChromaBlast because CreativeStudio is available for ChromaBlast as well. So for ChromaBlast users, this is where you would be going to the cotton garments and wearables. But for everybody else who's doing sublimation, you're actually going to go to the listing for garments. And that's where you're going to find the products that are specific to sublimation. So let's take a look in the garment category, and I'm going to go down to, you see there's a lot here, and keep that in mind, we do add more and more products into CreativeStudio, okay? So we're constantly adding more products in here. When we first started, really we just had some t-shirts in here. Now we have a whole lot more. So I'm going to go to the crew sweatshirt, and then I'm going to choose the white color for this purpose, and then we're going to choose either the front or the back. Now, I know a lot of people just go and put things arbitrarily on the front. Here's again another voice of experience, and this probably applies more to t-shirts than it does to sweatshirts. But the reality is, people that are maybe larger in build, okay, and I'm not talking about weight. I'm just talking about people that have big frames. I'm a big guy. I don't like to wear apparel with images on the front, because I feel like it overemphasizes the front, okay? And I feel like it makes me look bigger than I am. I actually prefer things on the back. I really do, especially a t-shirt. I won't even buy a t-shirt that's a full front. It has to be a full back. I prefer a pocket tee. I'm just saying, okay? And this is important for you to understand because when you're out there selling products, you got to think about not just selling a shirt, you got to think about end users, what do people like, having the variety to suit the different needs, okay? Sweatshirts, not as predominant as a t-shirt because t-shirts tend to be more clingy, and that's one of the reasons I like it more on the back than the front. Again, de-emphasizing the front. So with a sweatshirt, a lot of people are okay with it being front or back. t-shirts, a lot of men do prefer back. Keep that part in mind. But for our exercise today, we're just going to do the front of a sweatshirt. We do have to look at that size, and if you bought the SG800 with the bypass tray, you can do a 13 by 19, but not everybody bought that. So I'm actually going to just stick with an 11 by 17 image, okay, because that is the standard max size for the SG800. So we're going to start the designer, and it's going to bring in, we got our wonderful box there. As always, I like to start with templates because I'm not that artistic. So I'm going to go find a template. Since we're doing fan wear, I'm going to stick with something that's sports related. So I'm going to go right into Mascots. And we have a lot of different things in Mascots. Now, as I always am quick to point out, the reality is you can modify these templates. So just because you don't see it in the right color or it's the wrong mascot, I've seen people like looking for a specific mascot. Okay, oh, it's got to be, you know, a black bear. I don't see black bears in here anywhere. So what? You just change it. Okay, so I'm going to show you that exactly. I'm going to use the Panthers. I kind of like the layout of the Panthers. It's kind of neat. It's a shield and has all this interesting color in there. So I'm going to go with Panthers and bring it into the shirt. Now, for our exercise here, the team is not the Panthers. This team is the Sharks. So, as I said, it's a good starting point, and then we're going to make some changes to it to make our fan wear product. One of the tools that can help you a little bit here is the zoom. We don't have a very powerful zoom at this point, but the zoom becomes quite useful with apparel. So I'm going to go to Zoom to Design Area, which got rid of the shirt and let me zoom in a little bit closer, and I still got my box to work with for my boundaries, okay? So we want to make some changes here. As I said, this is the Sharks. So let's change out that particular Panther. Now, there's a tool here that will really help you with that. So I've selected the Panther, and the Panther, if you come over and look in our object list, you see Mascot, you see the word replace. I could just go up to Image and then find the image I want to put in there of a shark and put it in. But guess what? It's going to bring that image in full size, and you have to do some resizing and whatnot. If you're using the replace function, I've selected the Panther. You see replace next to it. When it comes in with the new image, the image I'm going to choose by using the replace function, it will come in as the same size as what we have right there. So I'm going to click replace, and it's going to take me to the stock design library, the images, and in this case I'm going to go down to Mascots again, and I'm looking for a shark. So let's look under aquatic, and I'm going to take shark number 4. So it's going to replace the panther head with the shark. A little bit small. We're going to play with that too in just a minute. Okay, so let's change some of the colorization here to better match what this particular team likes. This may not be their true colors, right? So I'm going to start with Panthers, and I'm going to click Panthers, and it is selected over here, and all I want to do is change the color, because the reality for this particular application, it needs to be a dark blue rather than a black. So you see, I made a pretty quick, easy change here. But it's not Panthers, okay? It's got to be Sharks. So let's go ahead. We've changed the color. Now we'll actually change the text, and I will type in Sharks in place of Panthers. Click OK. It's going to keep that font, and it's going to keep that double bridge. Okay, that's basically a double bridge look right here. If we want to make it larger, we can either drag from the corner, or we can use this function right here. So I'm going to make it a little bit larger there. So now I'm looking at Abbeville. We could change it to whatever. I'm just going to leave it as Abbeville, but instead of leaving it black, I'm just going to change that to actually white. And then see, that's a distressed font. Okay, so it looks kind of rough. Well, it's supposed to be. It's distressed. That's the font that was used here. I'm going to add in a outline to it, which actually I think makes white especially a little bit easier to read. We're going to use a size of 1 here, and we're going to put it behind the fill, because I want just a tiny little bit of outline. So here, okay, I did that. If we want it to actually be a little bit larger, easier to read, we can do that as well. So it may be that because we're working towards a shark, so let's make him a little bit bigger too while we're talking shark, right? Okay, I made him a lot bigger or whatever. So we have them in there. It may be too that orange isn't one of their colors. Maybe yellow is a color. So I've got some artwork selected here, and I'm going to change that to yellow. And you see where it changed the background colors there. So I want to get this other part, the shield here. So see if we can click in on it, and there we go. We're going to change that one over as well to a yellow. Okay, so potentially maybe this is more of who they are and what they are. Got some different colors. We got a little different mascot going there because now we have the real mascot. What does that look like on the t-shirt? So let's go back to zoom the product and bring the t-shirt back in. And if we want our preview, we can do our preview here. So we can kind of see what it would look like in the finished format. So well, the other thing I'm going to do here real quick is I think that's too low. You do have to be careful with that. See, it's centered in the box. So I'm just going to go to select all, and I'm going to move it up. Now, the reality is this. I said I was going to do that. Let's do it again. Okay, we got select all going there, and we'll just use the arrow at this time and move it up. We're only doing this for visual appearance on the screen. I mean, that doesn't determine where it's going to be on the shirt. Where you put the transfer, of course, determines that. But I'm just putting in there because I'm presuming maybe I'm going to show it to my customer, and normally, we want to have it, a little bit higher up that way. So now maybe if I go to the preview mode. Now, a lot of people do ask, they say, listen, is there a way to turn that into a PDF? Not currently. We are working on having that in the next version, which hopefully we may see is this in the next couple of months, okay? At this point, if it was me, I would just do a screenshot of it, and then I could, send that screenshot off to the customer to look at. So that's just something to think about. Okay, so from this point, you could do other things, okay? I like things that like wrap around the side, for example. So you got to definitely think about it to say, can I make this work the right way to be able to wrap it around the side? And we do not have an image of the sweatshirt seen from the side. So if you're going to create some of these wraps around the side, the reality would be you would need to work with a different image in the background to really figure out the right way, and that would be the blank canvas. So we're going to look at that in just a minute. Another variation I want to show you here real quick before we do anything with a wrap is when you're doing fan wear, a lot of times you can create products like here's just for the Sharks, but maybe you become more specific with the team. Maybe the Sharks is a soccer team, and you want to sell some things to the mothers of the players. So you create a mom kind of shirt. So maybe using this as our basis, I'm going to get rid of the shirt again for just a minute. We can go in and pull some of these pieces out and do something like that, okay? So what I'm going to do is go ahead and move my shark down kind of out of the way because I'm going to hang on to him, and I'm going to hang on to the lettering for the Sharks. I could even keep that whole, we could keep the whole thing in the background if we wanted. It may end up being too busy. So give me just a second here where I'm going to create something. I just want to show you this idea, and then you can kind of, run with it any way that you want. So what we're going to do is we got the Sharks in there, and then we're going to do is we're going to add in the word mom, and we're going to tie that into the sport being soccer, okay? So to do that, I'm going to go to text. So when I click the text, it always gives me by default the words sample text. So we're going to change that over to mom, M-O-M, and click OK. And what I want for this particular example, and then you can play with this all you want, okay, I'm trying to keep this simple, is I want that O to be as round as I can possibly make it, and you'll see why in just a minute. So I am going to go with, and look at that font, that O is actually sort of an oval. So I'm going to take a look at some other fonts real quick and see if I can find one where the O looks like it's a little more rounded. And just looking at the sample one here and the roundedness of the letters, I'm going to go with this particular one. And it's going to change over to mom there, and we can make mom a little bit larger. And then we'll go ahead and change it to the same color as the Sharks maybe. I did that. So here's the key. Here's the key where we do the little tie-in, okay? We're going to now put in this case, I'm going to use a soccer ball. It could be a tennis ball, it could be a golf ball, it could be a baseball, it could be about anything except a football. Football, we'd want to go back and find mom with more of that oval-shaped O, okay? So let's go into our images, and let's go down to sports, football, soccer. Now, you get the idea. There's a round O, and the soccer balls are round. So I'm gonna keep it clean and simple and just go with a standard, soccer ball instead of the one that's the skull-looking thing, right? So we're gonna bring that in, and then we're gonna resize it, and we're going to use that O as a template here to get that resized down to where we need it. And you know, some people will actually put it like inside the letter. I think it looks better if you don't even have the letter there. So I'm just going to put it over the letter. Now, the other thing you can do, and everything has just got to balance out right for it to really work. But the other little trick is, of course, you just go up to the lettering mom and you take out the O and you leave a space, and then you pop something in between. But now you made a message here that says, you know, I'm a shark mom, and maybe instead of shark's mom, which sounds kind of weird, maybe, you know, again, remember you're doing sort of a fanware thing, you do whatever you want, right? Let's make it just shark mom instead of shark's mom, okay? I think that actually translates better, sounds more interesting, right? So now we have shark mom, and we'll make that a little bit larger, easier to read. And, you know, like I said, it may be too busy, okay? So there's nothing wrong coming back up in here and maybe getting rid of some of this. I mean, if you have lots of possibilities, that's my whole point. So you can go whichever way you want with this. I'm going to get rid of a few things, like I'll get rid of that particular text right there because I think it's just too busy. And I may even just go ahead and get rid of the whole graphic back here. I mean, it's totally up to you what you want to do. So let's delete that section, and we'll get the other graphic now, and we'll delete it. Remember, all you got to do to bring it back is go to undo. But maybe now, see, it's not quite as busy. That's the whole point. Maybe it's just not quite as busy now. It makes it a little bit easier to read. We can bring this up. And I'm going to be honest with you, that mom font's kind of boring, you know, so you may go out and find something else more interesting. And then maybe we bring our shark up in here somewhere, and, you know, the shark can, you know, find a little place right in the middle somewhere. You know, there's just different ways you can do it. There's however creative you want to be with it. That's the neat thing about CreativeStudio, is it makes it easy to do some of these things. And then if we want to go and see what it looks like on our product, we can go back to our product. We can go back to a preview. And like, again, you were probably going to play, you know, probably looking at this and you're thinking just like I am, is the mom's a little boring, you know, so maybe, but you do want, you know, I played with it earlier of using the distressed look, and I felt like it was more readable if it was in a different font. That's called, you know, your creativity, you know, deciding what you think is going to work for that. So that's just, you know, that experimentation to see what can work. But the cool things about these, they become very sellable products, you know, because, and the other thing is you template it, okay? You're saving these templates, right, of what you're doing. So we go back into, I didn't want to preview. Let's unpreview, and we'll go back to the design area. Because again, we can select the football, soccer, and maybe we're going to replace this for a different sport. See, and that's what I like about that, is being able to have flexibility to go in some of the different sports. And the initial, everything that you have set up works great. And then we go over maybe to basketball, and we look for a basketball that we think is going to work for this particular application. So I'm just going to grab this one, why not? And since we did a replace, it's just going to replace the ball. Now, that one, I definitely got to tweak it up, just make it a little bit larger, because we can see that O underneath is showing up. You know, or by the same token, we can then take that one and say, okay, well, we did it for the basketball moms, and now maybe we're going to do it for the baseball moms. So, again, you get the gist of it. I've done a lot of these types of things, and you know, we try to get as creative as we can with what we're doing. And I've done some very interesting things, so we'll leave it at that. And that one replaced, actually, because there we go. But you see where we go with that? You know, it just, however you want to do that, okay? All right. So another thing I want to look at here is when I'm doing apparel, as I mentioned, I like to do things like wraps and sleeves, things like that, okay, because I think it enhances it when you start going beyond just the front and the back. So in order to do something that would be a wrap, you're not going to use the shirt here because it's not going to help you, Okay, so really for setting it up, the way that you're going to do this is we'll just clear that out. And then we'll go to a different product. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply go to my blank canvas. So I'm going to go to my blank canvas, which we're going to take the 11 by 17, and we're going to choose the 11 by 17 in the ledger format. Now, the grids are useful too, because the grids help you line things up. Okay, that's why we have them on there, is just to help you line up. So I chose centimeters. Most of you probably would rather use inches. So let's just go to inches. And let's see, 11 by 17. Grid with inches. So we're going to choose that one. Now, these grid lines do not print. They're just there for reference to help you, line things up. So now you're just thinking about if you're doing a wrap, you don't wrap all the way around the shirt. I mean, unless you got a really huge system, you're not going to wrap around the shirt. Now, if you had a VJ628, yeah, you could do a wrap in theory all the way around the shirt. You're just probably going to have to press it twice, obviously, right? But if you're going to press something around the side, you're just going to lay the shirt out differently to be able to press it. For you setting it up, it's going to be easier if you set it up with a blank canvas. So one of the things you're going to find is if you try to go in and use a standard template, for example, and we'll go back to play with the one I was just playing with, and I'm not going to change all the way back to the sharks. I'm just going to, what, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to choose any one of these here. If you take something, for example, like the bulldogs, and you put the bulldogs in here, right? And let's shrink the whole thing down just a little bit. So select all and bring it down. Now, you got to remember, right now you're just looking at this like straight on, right? But if it's a wrap, when you wrap text around the side, it becomes hard to read, okay, because it wraps all around the side. I mean, some of the best things that go around the side are just pure graphics, because it's much more visual that way. So you have to think about it, say, oh, yeah, I want to do something around the side. Well, make sure you figure out what makes sense to go around the side, okay, before you do it. And definitely if you have a graphic artist, or you are one, or you have connections with one, when you start putting things like integrating some wavy lines, maybe with some mascots and stuff, you can do some really cool stuff. I'm not that good. So, I might look at it like, and we're going to go back and stick with our shark right here, since that's what I started with. I can go in and look at the shark, and we'll pull him back up, and here he is. Sometimes just a repeating pattern, going around. And as you can see, I reduced him down, get him out of the bleed area. And the cool thing is I'm using, the grids to help me line up. It doesn't have to be centered in the grids. The grids just help me, space things the right way. So we'll get him in place, and we'll use the duplicate function. And we'll move this over. And we can do it again. And so we can build a whole series of sharks that just wrap around the side of the shirt. And maybe you do it on both sides of the shirt. I don't know. It just you just kind of play with it and see what happens. So you follow where I'm going with that. So that's one possibility. You can make them. You can do a lot of things, and I think repeating images can be pretty interesting. It gets more interesting if you can figure out some graphics that you want to put in there, maybe some some type of lines that are going through or whatever else. But the idea is, remember, you're setting this up for 17 by 11, so you want to measure the area you want to cover on that shirt before you start setting that up the right way, okay? Now, instead of doing completely repeating like this, another aspect that's kind of interesting is, think about if you're doing sort of a wrap, one of these images is like on the front and the other one is like on the back, right? So, what if we take this guy and we make him really big, and we'll just get rid of that guy and just work off this with the same size. We'll go to Object, we'll go to Duplicate, and we got him now at the exact same size, and do a little lineup. Now, just remember, this is going around the side, so this would be that side seam of the shirt, right? So when you start talking about placement. So what I'm going to do with this guy is I'm going to flip him horizontally, so he's facing the front and the other one's facing the back. Now, think about if that was printed on the sides of the shirt. That would be pretty cool, okay? Because especially when somebody lifts their arm, you got, you know, these guys are clearly visible, but even if their arms are down the sides of their shirt, it would be there. So, you know, how can you make all these things work? That's totally up to you. I mean, this is that sort of that artistic interpretation kind of thing, you know? Another thing to think about is, what if I want to do a sleeve on a short sleeve shirt? Because again, we don't have a product template per se for that. If I was going to be working on doing a short sleeve and putting something onto the sleeve, then what I'm going to do is just get rid of everything we got here. And I'm going to go back to product. And this time I'm going to blank canvas again. But on this one, I'm going to use the foam cover. See the foam cover? 3.5 by 6. And if you actually go measure a short sleeve right now, 3.5 by 6 is a pretty decent size for doing the sleeve. See what we got there? So now what we can do is we can take and put in whatever we're going to put there, so we can go back into our templates. And you know, if you had set that first template up and saved it, which I did not, but if we took that first one that we did with the sharks, at this point, once you had that set up, you could probably reduce it down to fit this area with some modification. Okay, and then I'm not going to go through and redo the whole thing for you. I'm just going to bring it in and say, listen, see, we probably could have saved that and then just put it right here on the sleeve. Okay, so that gives us a good way to do it on the sleeve. You know, we can actually save paper because we're using a smaller paper. Keep this part in mind too, is that there might be enough room, because this was cell phone paper, so it's 3.5 by 6. So depending on the size of this, I may be able to get 2 of them on the same sheet of paper. So I'm going to use the duplicate function again, and let's see if we can wedge it in there. Almost. But the reality says if I shrunk each one just a little bit, I could get 2 on one sheet of paper. You know, I could do that. So, you know, it's just one more thing to kind of look at. And then we just cut the paper in half and do, you know, each one is a separate sleeve, that kind of thing. So just some more ways. I mean, I always think about that interest aspect. Really, what costs us money to do this is labor, because of the time involved. But I mean, the ink cost for doing this is negligible. So the reality is you can do some pretty cool stuff. It's not cost you a lot of money to do it. Okay. Well, let's talk about a different kind of arm sleeve real quick. So we're going to just get rid of that. We're going to go to a different product, and this time we're going to look under garments. And we have a lot of things going on there. I mean, if you haven't spent time in there, you want to spend time looking. I mean, we got the ear warmers, we got the beanies, several different types of shirts and whatever. We got the arm sleeves, which have proven to be very popular. So I'm going to bring in an arm sleeve, and I will tell you the arm sleeves only give you one option. That's 13 by 19. And this is also set up where you can do both, where you can print out, you know, 2 on one sheet of paper. You could do a blank canvas and maybe play with some of this. With an arm sleeve, you have 2 different directions of where you can go. With an arm sleeve, you could simply just put on there, you know, whatever it is that you wanted, okay, in lettering or graphics or whatever else. Or you could do what I call full bleed. And I think full bleed really ends up looking a whole lot better for what we want. So if we want to go back and maybe pull a few things out, let me go to the templates. And I'm going to go back again to that same one that I've been using pretty much the whole time, under Mascots. And here we are, Panthers. And I'm going to change it back to Sharks real quick. It's going to do something weird when it comes in. Don't worry about it, okay? Yeah, we'll work with this, okay? So where it says Panthers, I'm going to turn that back into Sharks. And I'm also going to change the color of that back to that darker blue. And I probably don't want the rest of this on here. Maybe I do, but in my case, I'm going to get rid of some stuff. So I'm going to save sharks. I wanted that text. I like the text and the layout of the text, okay? The other stuff for the arm sleeve, I think I'm going to get rid of. So, and that's just me. If we want to get rid of the mascot, we can select delete, and we can get rid of the text, and we can delete that out as well. All right, so I'm creating sharks from scratch. You see we got sharks there. I happen to know what font that is, and that font is going to be, we're going to go to text font, and we're going to go to distressed, and on the distress we're going to take the destroy, okay? And there we go. Now we got our sharks in there. We're going to recolor it, and I'll rotate it around to where I want. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes when you rotate using the handle, it's hard to, when you go all the way around, it's like you go just a hair bit too far on the angle, and it's hard to get it back. So a lot of times I do use the keys over here. Okay. Now, think about this is an arm sleeve. Now, when you're looking at this arm sleeve, you just see it as one long sleeve, right? The reality is it's going to be L-shaped. I mean, when somebody wears it, some of the time it's L-shaped, sometimes maybe extended. So maybe I'm going to do the lettering this way and then go in and see, this will be the wrist down here. It goes up over the elbow and then up into the upper arm, right? So maybe I'm going to go and put that particular mascot back in up here. So let's go find him again and bring him in. And like I said before, I'm sure plenty of you could make it much more artistically pleasing. So here is our shark. We will bring him down. Do we want him to face this way, or do we want him to face the other way? I mean, we can do either way. It's totally up to us. Maybe I'll make the lettering a little bit smaller. But those are kind of some things to think about. So, you know, we can get him set up this way. If we want to put the same thing on both, we can do that. So I selected both, and then I'm going to, again, basically do a copy and paste and have that set up over here. Now, this is not a full bleed. And I was talking about full bleed because I think full bleed is more interesting. And I think when you have more interest, you're able to get a little better price point with it. Okay, that's why I like full bleed. So obviously you can see this is not full bleed. But I'm going to put a full bleed in here. If you remember way back when we did the original logo, we had some teal in there. It's sharks, it's water. So I'm going to look for some kind of image maybe that would work and fit that category of water, sharks. Try and tie into the colors of these school colors or whatnot. I'm going to go to backgrounds, recolorable. Nope, let's use photo textures, which may seem a little bit of a stretch for doing an arm sleeve. But there's one in here that's really cool, okay? It's water. I love the water one, okay? And so we're going to bring the water one in, and then we're just going to stretch it to, you know, fill up the area. And once that's full, because it's in a layered format, I have to do the move down to be able to, you know, make it all work the right way. But that is a lot more interesting. Now, that may not be necessarily feasible because the fact it's sort of a photographic image in the background going on an arm sleeve, well, whatever. Okay, it is a lot more interesting to look at. That's my whole point. That's why I like full bleed. That's the whole reason I did the full bleed there. So, you know, another popular thing with fan wear is the socks. And the cool thing with the socks, you can do the exact same thing on socks. I mean, you set up your arm sleeves and you're ready to go to print it or whatnot, but we could do socks too. So with socks, we can just simply go to a different product, and we will go and find our socks, which is under garments. And socks, we have to think about a couple of different things. Actually, I don't think it's under garments. I think it's actually under socks. Sorry about that. There we go. You know, you have a couple of different ways you set it up. I'm just going to use it if you're using the straight insert, because you can tell by looking at it that it's pretty close to what we got there. And I'm going to go with the larger there. So when you see what's going to happen is it's going to bring in the socks, but you can see pretty quick, hey, listen, this is not too difficult for me to resize. and reformat to be able to work for the socks. So I just simply took them, made it larger. I can go all through that with this, but I find it easier and more accurate if I just delete that and then use like this, like that, and go to here and just do that basic copy and paste and slide it over to the other sock, which we have done. As far as the background, what do? We're just going to stretch it all out to be able to fill it in. Now, the reality is the socks actually, because I had to make everything larger, you know, the water doesn't match the exact water pattern on the sleeves, but you see where I'm going. But again, the key there is if I'm doing full bleed, it does look more interesting. And I'll wager you go out there to any pair of socks and you do it without a full bleed and you do it with a full bleed, provided you can find the right bleed. The full bleed is always going to look more interesting, okay? It's going to look more impressive. It's going to have a higher perceived value. And that's what we're trying to look at. Plenty of time people do socks where all they're doing is just putting a mascot and that's it, you know, on the white sock. But this becomes more interesting. And again, that background, that's just one that I chose because it was pretty. I mean, the idea is you look at whoever that team is and you're getting the right team colors in the background. And there's all kinds of different patterns. And you start thinking about who's the end user. You know, if you're selling it to men, we tend to be more bland with, you know, backgrounds and whatnot, where if you're looking at women, you may find the chevrons and things like that become a much more interesting type of background. And you do see that with a lot of fan apparel where they're taking some fashion elements and they're trying to pull the colors out, you know, and then match it in with those particular types of elements. So, you know, if you can find chevrons where you can then go in and change the colors to match the school colors, you can do some really neat stuff. And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, being creative, is looking at, and here I don't want to do that. Let's, just for fun, we'll just randomly pull up some a different type of background. But if you take a look at something like recolorable patterns, we know that any pattern there is going to be recolorable. And I don't know what's appropriate because I don't know who my end user here is or anything else. But, you know, maybe you went and found a chevron pattern like this, and we put this in for our background instead of the background that we were using. And that's a little scary, but, you know, we're going to put it in there anyway. And you can see that the cool thing in all this is I can come over here and start making changes, you know, in the background color. There, that became a lot more readable. And maybe that did, or maybe it didn't. You know, maybe white would have been better for that. Still, it's kind of busy, but my whole point in it is you have those options, okay? So you start trying to find which patterns really work and which really want to jump out at you. Those are just some of the things I want to show you with fanwear is taking some of these different products that we have in here, experimenting out with those products, thinking about how to make them interesting. Use the tools that you have to set things up. Use the different graphics and templates and things that come with the system to help you set things up. I mean, those are very useful, and as you're creating stuff, of course, you're saving it and then you're applying it to other things. And you can do non-apparel products too. You know, when we talked about in our last presentation, we talked about different types of fanwear products. Things like coffee mugs, you know, are always very popular. But you start creating things, and you know, where possible, if you have some type of layout, think about the different pieces in the layout. Can we pull those pieces out and use them different ways and move them around? So those are just some of the things to think about. So CreativeStudio is a cool program. I know that not all of you are using it, but it's there. If you've bought an SG printer, the 400 or the 800, you do have access to it, and it's totally free for you to use. Does not work with the Ricoh printers or any of the Epsons because the technology is such with the drivers and the color management that it's geared to the SG printers. So, and if you've never used it and you have an SG printer, then you just need to activate it and start using it. So anyway, that's covering what I wanted to cover. If you have questions, go ahead and ask those questions now, and I'll try and get you some answers. One question, of those products in the garment section, are they all vapor apparel? I haven't checked. They probably are. When it comes to apparel, you can get by with pretty much almost generic, if you know what I mean, because you're only using it as an image in the background. You know, a t-shirt's a t-shirt, it's a t-shirt as far as the image in the background, okay, for a template. When it comes to the actual t-shirt, the construction, all those kind of things, that's a little different, obviously. But as far as just in the garment sections, you're able to, you know, you see basic polo, basic long sleeve, those types of things. Most of these are probably the Vapor. Other products could be put in there. Other brands can be put in there. They may or may not get done that way because, again, as far as showing it to your customer, they just see it as a t-shirt in the background. When you start talking about some of the hard products or non-apparel products, then it's a different story because of the fact that you are showing them the real things. Okay, so those, just keep that in mind. Okay. Any additional questions? Well, if that's all the questions, we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks for coming out today. We always appreciate you having to attend. Anytime you have ideas or whatever for some things that you'd like to see with our webinars, please let us know. You can actually send an email to webinars@sawgrassinc.com. webinars@sawgrassinc.com with any ideas of some of the things you'd like to see in the future. We do look at those, and we use that to help plan our future presentations. Thanks again for coming out, and we'll see you next time. Bye.